Mesopotamia, which is where there was the Neolithic revolution. That's when human beings began farming, and the practice gradually spread from there. Now, when you start farming, you can produce 100 times more food than you can if you were hunter-gathering. And so as people started farming, they could support a much bigger population. And we don't know when farming actually arrived here on Salisbury Plain, but there's an important factor to consider, and that is the first ploughs used by the first farmers were made of wood, and wood works exceptionally well on chalk soil. It's extremely poor in the heavy waterlogged soils in other areas and the clay soils, because the wooden ploughs break. So the people up here on Salisbury Plain would have had a second advantage in that they would have been able to produce a lot more food than their neighbours. They would have been richer than their neighbours, and they would have been much more influential, and they produced a huge surplus of food. And what do you spend your money on? Well, they decided they were going to build a monument to the sun, and that was Stonehenge. The reason they would have built a monument to the sun is because they were farmers, and they would have soon realised that wherever the sun goes, that's where the crops grow. If the sun doesn't get there, the crops don't grow there. Also, in a winter with hardly any sun, you get a bad harvest and hungry people. But in a good summer with lots of sun, you get a good return and you get happy people. And so they would have worshipped the sun. Also, the sun always rises in the east and sets in the west, and it would have been something they could rely on, a continuum, in a world where life could be brutal and short, and so much was unexplained. So the first thing they did was they built a ditch in the ground. That's called a henge. It's about 100 metres in diameter, and there are 450 henges in Britain. The next thing they did was they brought in 15 ginormous stones called megaliths, or literally great stones. These weigh about 40 tons, and they would have stood them up in a horseshoe that faces the setting sun in the winter solstice. I forgot about actually. Before that, they brought in 80 2-ton blocks from Wales, 150 miles away. Imagine that. They didn't have wheels and they didn't have stone tools, but they managed to move 80 2-ton blocks, and they were arranged in a circle inside the ditch, the henge. Then comes the big 40-ton blocks that come from 20 miles away. But even though it's only 20 miles, they were shaped. They hit them with other rocks to make them square. They had to stand them up, and on the top they put lintels, which are horizontal stones, and they fit together using ball and socket or mortise and tenon joints, like a giant Lego kit. Around the megaliths they put 60 sarsens, so 60 20-ton blocks, all linked by a lintel on the top of each, and the lintel carved into a circle, all with the mortise and tenon joints and a tongue and groove joint at either end, so that even the lintels were locked together. It is just the most amazing feat of engineering and architecture, and even today it's unclear how they managed to do it. It's just unbelievable. We know that there are 1,000 burials around Stonehenge, and even after Stonehenge stopped being used around 1000 BC, it was started about 3000 BC and ended in 1000 BC, so it was working for 2000 years, but the people still continue to be buried there, and it is a monument also to the dead. The burials have been excavated, and they've got expensive grave goods in them, so we know that these are the graves of the rich and the famous. They're high status goods. If you go to Westminster Abbey in the centre of London, you've got all the great and the good of British society are buried there. There are 16 monarchs, prime ministers. Charles Darwin, the man who wrote about evolution. Stephen Hawking, the man in the wheelchair, the astrophysicist. There is also Charles Dickens, the author. He's buried in Westminster Abbey. And it's nice to think that Stonehenge would have been, in the Stone Age, the site where people came from all over Britain to be buried. And we know that people came from all over Britain because we can analyse the contents of their teeth that were forming when they were children, and we can get an idea about where they grew up. So the people buried at Stonehenge come from everywhere. Also, the animals that were killed for the feasting at Stonehenge, they've come from all over Britain too. So that gives us a couple of undeniable facts. Number one, you couldn't have built Stonehenge unless you had a large surplus of food with which to feed the workers who would not have been working on the land. Number two, you could not have been at war. If you were fighting a war, you wouldn't have used up those resources on a monument to the sun or to the dead. If you were at war, then people could not have travelled from all over Britain with their animals for the big party. Now, when was the party? The party was at the winter solstice. So the sun's movements change twice a year at the solstices, and the people celebrated that here. The winter solstice is in December the 21st. The big horseshoe, the biggest stones, faces towards the setting sun on the winter solstice. They were celebrating the end of the winter, because after the winter solstice, the nights begin to get shorter, the days get longer and warmer. So it's obvious they were celebrating that. Also, if you were a farmer, you could not afford the time in the summer to go and have a big party at Stonehenge in the middle of Salisbury Plain. You just did not have the time to do that. And it's also perhaps when they would worship the dead on the midwinter solstice, because that is the longest night of the year. Perhaps the time when the veil between the world of the living and the world of the dead was at its thinnest, and you could commune with the people, with the ancestors. So the way it works is that when you are a hunter-gatherer, you are following herds of deer around, and if someone dies from your family, then you have to leave them behind, maybe in a shallow burial, and then you move on. You cannot afford to lose the herd. And when you are farming, then all your dead, you can put them all in the same place, and that's where we begin funerary art, i.e. what do we do around the body of the dead person, and also funerary ritual, like what sort of things do we do when we bury someone, and also what do we do after they're dead, when is it we go and visit them, and what do we take them, and so on. What grave goods do we bury them with? And these are all things that would have and could have only developed after farming, when the people were stationary in the areas where they lived. And we know that Stonehenge is almost certainly a monument to the dead. Some of the things that you'll see at Stonehenge, I will show you, but maybe we'll drive straight past it. We'll have to wait and see what the traffic's like. There is an exhibition centre, and if you go in the exhibition centre, then you can stand inside the stone circle, and they're all around you is a screen, and it shows you what it looks like from inside. Also, there is a gift shop and a canteen. In the canteen you can buy these big meaty pastries which are called pasties. They're very filling, they're very good, they're £5.75. They are traditional soul food from the west of Britain where we are. The gift shop, you can buy all sorts of gifts from hundreds of pounds to just a few pounds. They sell key rings and jewellery made out of the blue stone, which is very interesting. That comes from Wales, 150 miles away. But let me warn you about the gift shop. In the gift shop, they are slower than slow people having a really slow day in Slowland. So do not be late back for the coach because they've taken their time. On the right, we've got our first burial mound. It's a lump in the ground. It's a single inhumation, a single burial. There's another one at about 300 metres on the left. The big warehouses on the hill, that's Britain's secret weapons testing facility. You know it's secret because it's signposted from the road in red, just in case there was any doubt. On the left, if you look, there is a statue of a person reaching up for the sun. He is called the ancestor, and he is our tribute to the ancestors. But not my ancestors because I'm British, everyone's ancestors because we are all human. And humanity developed in similar lines all at the same time. In Egypt, when they began irrigating the banks of the Nile and farming, that's when we see the building of pyramids. There are pyramids in Africa, in the Sudan, and also in Iraq with the ziggurats of Ur and the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, for example, all dependent on farming to release the labour into the wider economy where it was used for the building of religious sites. So this is what's going to happen. I'm going to give you a time to be back at the coach. I'll do that when we get there. You have to remember that you go on a gold shuttle bus. So they will provide you the little shuttle bus. It takes you to the stones and brings you back. You have to factor in that you may have to queue for it when you are coming back from the stones. So make sure you are back with at least half an hour to spare to get on the coach. That will enable you also to go in the exhibition centre and to use the gift shop for souvenirs. Like I warned you, the weather said it was going to be dry today, but they can't get it right, and so the weather forecast is currently that it's going to be wet, so you need to take a waterproof or an umbrella with you. Stonehenge is very exposed, and so it's also very windy. If you want to come back to the coach early, that's fine. Me and Andre will be waiting for you at the coach. The way to remember which coach is ours, I will put my flag on the front of the coach. These are the colours of my former regiment, the Royal Army Medical Corps. So look now or look when you get off. So look for these colours and you will know that this is our coach. I can't give you a time just yet because we've not got to Stonehenge, but please do not be late. You're stealing time from other people that want to be in Bath. So start to have a look on the right hand side. There's a long line of campers. They are hippies and stoners. They've got names like Obsidian, a Moon Unit, and Sky, and they smoke wacky backy all day. They reject capitalism, but they accept massive handouts from their rich parents, and they stay here permanently. Stonehenge is going to pop up on the right, so start to look right. There's Stonehenge. The stone on its own is the heel stone, and the summer and winter sunset and sunrise are aligned through that, and the biggest stone is stood on its own with a bobble on the top. That is the inner horseshoe or megalith. That's the one that lines up with the winter setting sun solstice. Yesterday was the equinox, which is the exact halfway between the solstices. That's why there's so many stoners here. Over on the left you can see a line of burial mounds on the rise of the ground, and you'll see burial mounds in the distance all around Stonehenge. All the lords and ladies of prehistoric Britain all come in to get a bit of the power. Look to the right of the coach here and look over to the left. There are over 1,000 burial mounds. From 3,500 years ago they began burying people in burial mounds, and one of them is very important. I'll show you that in just a minute, and I think it tells us a bit about the origin of Stonehenge, and I'll explain in just a minute. So the way it works then is that at a certain point the people of Stonehenge or around here begin farming. Look on the left and you can see the white chalk in the fields. It's very, very fertile. It's a great soil to work on. It's very easy. So they would have produced more and more food. The population would have increased. They would have exerted more influence on the poorer people around them by exchanging goods and services, and they would have become powerful. Because they were farming, they could put all their dead in one place. And on the right is a long barrow. It's a huge snaky thing that predates Stonehenge. We'll see it in a minute as we come around. So this burial mound is older than Stonehenge itself. So the people, what they do is they store the bones of the dead in these long barrows, and you can go in and out of them. They are they're like man-made tunnels. Here it is on the right. You can see a concave where the door would have been, and they would have stored bones in there, the bones of the ancestors. And at certain times of the year they would have come back to worship the ancestors and ask them for favours in the new year. I'm guessing that that was what they did on the winter solstice, December the 21st. December the 21st is right next to Christmas. It says nothing in the Bible about Christmas, so me personally, I've no doubt in my mind that we are still worshipping the winter solstice today. We call it Christmas. It's in the middle of winter. It's when we put our tools down. It's when we travel miles to meet up with our friends, to party and to feast. And I bet that's exactly what they were doing here 4,000 years ago. So there's a visitor centre on the right. There's a little gold bus. See the little gold bus moving? It's going to turn right, and that's where you get on it around the corner. I'll show you where that is. I'll show you where the toilets are as well. Depending on where we park is where you get off the bus. I'll get Andre to open the middle door as well. So you will head down to the stone circle, get photos, and then the bus will drop you off at the visitor centre on the right. That's where the canteen is and the gift shop. If you want to go straight to the canteen and gift shop, you can, and you can get on the gold bus there. But the better place to get it, to go straight to the stones, is there on the right. Look, see it parked on the right? That's where you wait. And you take not this path nearest us, but the path the other side of it behind the trees. There's usually someone in a high-vis vest. Here is where I book in. There's also over the other side on the right, that's where the toilets are. Alrighty, so just hang on a second, let's see where we manage to park. We'll park as close as we can to the shuttle bus and the toilets. So the time now, ladies and gentlemen, is 10 past 10. So if I see you back on the coach at 1:35, not 1:35 at all, 11:35. 11:35 back on the coach. That's exactly 1 hour and a half from now. And like I say, if you want to get back early, you can. If you get cold or wet, you can sit in the canteen and drink coffee, hot chocolate, and eat pasties until they come out of your ears. But even if you're a fat porker like me, I bet you can't eat more than one pasty. They're very filling. You're going to go here on the right, look. No. Right, so go past those children in the red and down the path to the left. That's how you're going to do it. So once you're off, so once you're off, go to the front of the coach and I will direct you using my flag. Any questions, come and speak to me. 11:35, that's 1 hour and a half from now, 90 minutes back on the coach.